just mentioning, we have 72 slides, but we will not force all of you to go through them. But in case you have a question, we might have an answer for it. So let me kind of go through some introductions. I'm Dennis Young, president of ITNR, and kind of go around. Todd Powers, principal of the firm. He's going to be talking about some costs. And go ahead.
Rich Blair. So I'm going to be project manager. I'm working on these projects. I've been working through the designs, talking with your departments, and understanding what their needs are.
He's one of the people who met with the staff, your staff. Greg Goebel.
I'm Greg Goebel. I'm the firm's director of design.
And Brian.
And I'm Brian Kronwitter, executive vice president, helping with cost estimating on the project.
Yeah. He's involved in a lot of design build projects outside of just the public schools. So he brings some of that expertise to it. So, and who did we miss?
Frank Wiseman. I'm currently working on the Fox and segment projects that's going on. I'll be involved with these projects.
So you might have seen a lot of him. So anyway, so we're all here. We each have a different role. So let me kind of kick off and share with you what our agenda is. Hopefully that's popped up. So we're going to talk about the Fox campus and all the projects on the Fox campus. Get everybody up to speed on that. We're going to talk through the site plans, floor plans, and all the things that we got feedback from the staff. We also have some elevations of the outside of the building we want to kind of get your input on and direct us to. So always fun in design when we get a lot of people's input on that, but yours is important. So after that, we're then going to move ahead and talk about the second campus. The middle school, most of the time talking about that, and also what we're going to do over at the high school and the elementary. And then we'll talk briefly about the secure entries. We have drawings on every one that rounds out the 72 slides. But some of you have already been through those buildings with us. But here's where we want to end up. We want to end up talking about the budget. We want to talk about what the projects cost. By then, you would have known what the scope is and what they look like. And that's where we want to end up. So that's really a great reason for meeting today, is to go through that budget information. And then, of course, we'll talk about the schedule. So let's talk about the budget. Hopefully that popped up. We'll do it off the side. We have some budget pressures that we're dealing with. And you have budget pressures on all jobs. This is no different, but here's what these are. Based on the original budgets that were kind of developed for the prior bond issue, the $70 million that was in 2019 that didn't pass, a lot of those numbers have just kind of stayed the same and brought forward. All good, but that's what occurred. So since then, as we've gotten into all the details, it looks like the needs and the priorities, a lot of them have stayed the same, but some have shifted. We're going to talk about that in terms of, let's say, second and middle school, the library. A lot of things have kind of shifted a little bit. Second thing is, we have received a lot of great faculty input on what their needs really are, and we need to address those needs. Some may not rank high on the priority list, but at least we have all those documented and we can kind of decide. We've already talked about that over on the family and consumer science side, so that was good. Then the next is, we know more details, but the code has enforced storm shelters, which that wasn't back in 2019, so we're required to put storm shelters on those additions. So that has a cost, and then just general cost escalation, what we were talking about. Those are all the pressures. At the end of it, we still have to achieve what's best for students. So that hasn't changed. So that's always our target. So with that as our target, we're going to walk through some of these. So let's see here. I think a little off to the side. So before we get into showing you some of the drawings in the Fox High School, here are some things that we want you to look at. First one is that we have a new front to the campus, a new front. That's number one on the list. Everybody was excited about having a new front. Put an addition out front. Second one is we've added a storm shelter. We've minimized it to meet the code, not for everybody, so we addressed that. We have come up with what we think is an improved use of the library, and you're going to see that. So I think that was a real gain. We've recaptured some existing classrooms right next to where the addition is, so we can use those rather than building all new. We can use the existing rooms next door, renovate them for less price, and still meet everybody's needs. So I think that was a great idea. We've also added a STEAM room, which is really fantastic because the programs were all headed that way, and it's right off the library and right off of the addition. So I think that's good. We have outdoor child play area. We have added all-inclusive restrooms, 3 of them. And I think people are getting kind of excited. I see a real trend, by the way, in schools with that kind of a healthy, friendly environment. We've added faculty restrooms, which can't leave them out. I think we've addressed all the needs of science, art, family, consumer sciences. We've added 1 additional classroom for growth. We have storage, sometimes always squeezed out. We have created a whole new, better entry to the library, you're going to see. And then last, we've added some signage in areas where people can actually know where to go on this campus. So with all that, there's a lot. So let me just kind of show you this. I'm going to try to stand someplace where I'm not going to be in somebody's way. And that's going to be hard to do, isn't it? Let me stand over here. What you see is where that red rectangle is. That is the addition. And as we come in, the elementary is the far right, middle school is next, and then the high school are the 3 wings off to the side. The red dot to the far left is the front door of the high school, not to be confused with where the addition is going to be. So we have to really mark that. We have an idea on how to do that. The blue dot with the yellow arrow in the back, that's where the entry currently is for the middle school. That's going to be removed and it's going to come up to pretty much where that red dot and the yellow arrow is next to the word middle school. So that's going to move up. You'll see a blue dotted line that goes through that rectangle, our addition. That is the way you get to the library. So the library hasn't lost its entry. You'll see it's created a much better entry to that library, what we want to show. So that's kind of the big picture. And you can see as you drive in, we have to kind of slide the road off to one side a little bit. But we have to do utility work in that area, underground utility work anyway. So they're going to be turning up that road. So let's just, well, that's a staging area for the contractor. That's included in the bid, put it back in place. So I think we have a new front door to the campus, a new way of circulating, rather than putting it off to the side or in the back, they get to see it off in the front. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Rich and let him walk through each of these plans because he's met with every staff person.
Before you start, we're not here just to preach at you. We're here to have a conversation. So as we show you all these images, some of them are going to be surprises to you. I'd encourage you to ask questions or interrupt with something that is a concern you have. So we want to learn something from you during this conversation. So take it away.
Sure. All right, so just to kind of let you know what's going on here, we have a couple colors on the screen to try and help you understand the different areas. The area in green up at the top is existing building, which is where we're doing remodel work on the first floor of the building. The blue indicates addition as well as the yellow areas, but the yellow is indicating where our storm shelter is going to go on the first floor. So while the blue and yellow are separated by colors, they are still the same floor. It is all one area and it is part of the addition. But what we are trying to show here is where that storm shelter is. To kind of walk you through the spaces, the red arrow here is that front entrance off the front drive. And as you see, it goes all the way to the back with that display area, gallery area, introducing the different spaces as well as bringing you back to that library and that maker space that's falling off of that. What we have done is tried to group your different departments. So we have a fax area, we have an art department, and we have a science department. On the first floor, we're hosting both your fax and your art departments. And we did try to break them apart, kind of keep them in their groups as best we could. Obviously, the plan doesn't always allow for that. What we do have to the top left in the green is ceramics. To the right would be your art. As we go across, we have your photo, and then your art is over here in the yellow. Along the front face, we have your fax department, which would be your sewing, child development, and then we have 2 fax labs, one being your foods, and we can talk about what that other one is as we move along. Any questions on this level? I'll move up to the second floor. The second and third levels are both going to be science labs and science classrooms. So we have them broken between the two levels. On this level, we have your general classes on the bottom side here. And what we try to do is kind of create a general layout that is consistent across the board and allows flexibility. We have a lab up in the upper right-hand corner. And then in the middle left upper hand, we have your utility areas. That'd be your bathrooms, your utilities for mechanical systems, as well as janitor's closet, staff workroom, stuff like that. And as we go to the third level, you'll see something very similar. We do have a few differences in the fact that we have a few more labs on this level, and we do have a SPED classroom as well. I'm going to go through some enlarged plans. We'll kind of comb through these quickly because there are a lot of plans, but if you guys have questions about them, we can talk about them. We have met with all the departments. We have shown them these drawings after making changes and meeting with them, and they have given us feedback a couple of times, and we've made adjustments multiple times. So we do believe that we are meeting what they're asking for. We might still need some tweaks here and there, a few things that need to be updated, and we'll work on those as we keep moving forward. We feel that we've kind of met their needs and what they're looking for in these spaces. So this is a typical classroom, and the idea here is they are going to need labs from time to time. So what we've done is casework along the perimeter walls. We've done some tables down the middle, and these tables are movable. And the idea is when they need to do labs, they can push them over, so these dashed rectangle spaces would be where those tables would dock and allow the students to move over and have those lab spaces as needed. And if not, they pull them into the middle. You have a typical class session. You look up at the front and have that class as necessary.
Oh, that's a real nice layout for flexibility.
And then what we've also done in these spaces is created some storage in between. And the idea here is you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner that there's a door on both sides. And what it is there's a typical classroom on both sides. This allows a teacher to be able to watch another class if the other teacher has to leave. But it also allows them to use the same storage room and be able to share supplies so that they don't keep them all separate, have to wheel them around in the hallway to get them back and forth between the classrooms.
So the only sink in that room is the one at the front demo table?
Actually, there's a few. There's some rectangles down the sides.
Okay.
And those are based off kind of the lab layouts.
Okay.
And those are kind of a little different from class to class. And we have been talking with the teachers about it. Certain classrooms need more sinks than others. And we've been trying to work with the curriculum and what's necessary for those rooms to meet those things.
We like to keep the plumbing in the wall so you can get to it, and not in the middle of the room.
They go the length of the
I just have a question. Other one, was asking the question, the SPED is on the third floor?
Yes.
And so do we have an elevator right there by that SPED class?
So I'll go back. So your SPED room is here in the middle, and your elevator is up to the right.
Okay, all right, I missed that.
That's right. It's a good question. So yeah, the elevator serves all three levels and comes out relatively in the middle of the building. The idea is so that if you have it at one end, you get to travel all the way across. So we try to keep it as central as we could. Also for the lower level, coming in and out. We don't have it right off the center hall, but we do have it close by so you can reach that space.
That's a large elevator for emergency purposes as well.
Wheelchairs?
Yeah.
Structure. It has to be able to have a gurney in case there's an emergency, medical emergency. Things like that.
And for furniture, moving up and down. If they bring in chemicals, they don't want to go up the steps. They go in there with their cart.
While you're asking about SPED, here is the SPED classroom. So it is a little smaller than the other classrooms. It's not quite to the same level, but what we do have are some tables that we're looking at in the center with a demo table similar to the other science classrooms. Some casework along the perimeter with some sinks and upper cabinets as well. And we do have goggles and eye washes and stuff like that, and that's based off, again, our conversations with the departments and what they need in these spaces.
And also, is there a bathroom close to that SPED area?
Yeah, so the bathrooms are right by the elevator,
Okay.
and those are stacked on all three levels, so they're all in the same central core, so everybody kind of has the same location to go to for those bathrooms.
All inclusive.
Explain that.
Gender neutral.
Okay, so everybody literally has their own private restroom, is that the way that works?
Yeah, we have a photo of an actual one constructed, and the key is that it's all very visible, and rather than going into a stall that has, you can look underneath, go look above, you actually go into a self-contained room, bathroom, and close the door. There's a light in the ceiling that goes on automatically that goes red if it's occupied. If it's unoccupied, it'll go green. So you can look down and say, okay, that one's empty and I can go into it. And then you come out and you share, the hand wash sinks and drinking fountains together. I have been in those kinds of restrooms, and the first time I ever went in a few years ago, I was kind of shocked that I washed my hands. This woman comes up next to me washing her hands. Am I in the wrong restroom? So, from an adult civic kind of location, yeah, you have to kind of see if you want to do that or not. But in a student area, students are really favoring this. They feel very comfortable with it, easy to supervise. Makes a real statement that you're making to them.
If it is going to be easy to supervise that area.
Yeah.
It's easier, it actually makes the restrooms safer too, because the area that usually isn't being supervised because it's out of sight is now open to the corridor, so anybody passing by can see if there's a problem.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
quite nice.
there's no door here.
The image, I think, will help explain.
No door there. I mean, you can have a security camera looking right down. Obviously, you can't go into the stall, but you can look right in the restroom and see what's going on.
And I would assume that's the trend in all schools right now, is it not?
It's picked up pretty quickly, yes. It's not like it's been going on for 5 years. It's just recently, in the last year.
It's a pretty efficient thing to do, and it eliminates some of the problems with women always not having enough fixtures.
Yeah, that's-
So now they're just all everybody, and it's first come, first served, and it solves a lot of problems.
Smoking in the bathroom,
They vape now.
So I'm assuming that the urinals in a men's restroom wouldn't exist in this situation.
No, they're gone. It's all
Right.
water.
No water fountains.
Split classroom, we'll go into the labs now. So labs we've kind of shown with the teachers as well and gotten some feedback from them. And the idea is to kind of create these two different areas of the classroom. One area where you're doing your teaching, the other where you're doing your labs. And we have again talked about the arrangement here. The teachers that come back, we originally had the demo table on one side. They've asked to have it in the center because they would like to be centrally located so the students are a little closer to that display and being able to see it. So we've kind of taken that into account. We also have combined the storage and prep areas for the labs. The other labs are across the hall on this level. And the idea is we had looked at kind of giving them separate ones, and they came back to us and said, no, we'd like to keep everything together. In this situation, we tend to share these products. And as long as we have some hall access, which we're giving them hall access into that, then they don't have to go in the classroom, they're fine. And that's kind of the direction we've gone.
These are the sinks.
So just some basic science classrooms that we've done in the past. Ideas to kind of keep them clean, open, make them very usable and learnable, make sure you're not focused on the wrong things. These are obviously some slides with some furniture that you guys might not go with, but we're just trying to show you some ideas of what we may or may not do in these spaces. I'll move through some of these art classes quickly. If you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. But what we have done is kind of take into consideration what you guys are using already in those spaces, ask what might be needed in the future, and try to make these spaces work. So obviously we have kiln, we have potter's wheels, we have sinks that are required for ceramics, as well as some larger tables so they can do their pottery and clay products as well. In the art, we have two art rooms, a little different in shape, but same principle. Large tables for the students to work at, extra sinks so that they can wash out brushes at the end of class. You don't have a mad dash of everybody trying to do that, as well as looking at lockers and stuff for storage, so the students can store their products in there while they're between classes or until the next day, and providing plenty of storage for them to store all their products. So the other art classroom, similar thing, again, just a different setup for that space. Photography, we've gone back and forth on this a little bit, and the consensus that we've been told is that the dark room, we're moving away from the dark room is what we've been kind of told. And going more to computers, focus more on graphics and how you're gonna use those moving forward. So we're looking at more as a classroom setting with some casework and tables around the perimeter where permanent computers may be, depending on how that layout needs to be. We're still working through some of that, but I think this is kind of addressing those needs at this point. Child development, provide an area for the kids to come into that, and then as well as an area for the students to learn. Storage, also a toilet for the young students to come in, so they aren't using the high school bathrooms, and the teachers don't have to take them out of the classroom.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Where do these kids come from?
What, the little kids?
They're preschool kiddos, so parents bring them.
At a certain time during the day, or?
Yeah, and right now they're coming into the regular high school classrooms. So now that we're adding this addition, you go back to that child development room real quick. Right now they're using the regular restrooms that the high school students use, right? Because that's what we have. So this really helps facilitate that program. And I mean, that's part of, they bring those kiddos in. Our high school students work with those students, and they do run time with them. They do alphabet, colors, things like that.
So people sign up for this? And is it an hour?
I believe it's a half-day program.
So the students, the high school students are coming and going?
Yes.
And the little kids are staying?
Yes, correct.
Oh, we need to go see that.
It's very cool.
Cool, okay.
And one other thing that I'm not showing here right now is across from this, now let me go back real quick to the overall floor plan. Sorry, it takes a little bit to go back, but since we're on that, I want to make sure you guys understand that we have created a little area here outside. So the child development's here, and we're creating an area with a door across the hall so that we can have a small playground out there potentially.
It's not an outside area, it's a.
It is.
It is an outside
It's an
area.
outside area,
Yeah.
okay.
It's kind of unusual because it's between the two buildings, but there won't be any growing things in there, or if they are, they'll be very selective and sort of in a contained area. But there's a lot of very high-tech materials now that you can make that a playground that the kids will really think is cool. I mean, it'll be a kind of a grassy floor mat thing that is soft, and if the kids fall, they don't bump themselves. There can be slides and all kinds of interesting things in there. So it's kind of an interstitial space, and you might not have guessed it, but it'll be a nice little playground for them.
Doesn't look like it's very big.
No, it's not.
It's not. But my understanding is that the kids, there's probably 6 to 10 kids max.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a large volume of students. So this is just an area where they can get them outside for a little bit. You're not taking them out on the road, trying to get around the building or get over to the elementary playground. Sewing fashion, same setup as a lot of the classrooms, teaching in the center, and then the sewing would be around the perimeter of the space. And we are looking at storage for what their needs are as well. Now the FACS area, we were asked to do 4 classrooms, and we've provided that. And there was talk originally about 2 foods labs. We're looking at it as there's 1, but we do have 2 schemes here, with 1 being optional, and kind of looking at 2 ways of setting up these kitchens. So the first one is more your traditional, having more of a typical kitchen setup with a sink, counters, and all that you might cook in. And then the kids would bring that food into the center and eat their food once it's done, or sit there in the center and learn prior to going out and cooking. The other option, and here's an example of how that might look, something we've done in the past, very similar in style and layout. The other option was more from a standardized method that would kind of focus kids in certain areas and kind of create a central area for cooking and learning. So the idea here would be that these tables in the center might be stainless steel tables. They would have pull-down power from the ceiling, and whatever blending, cutting, chopping, they might do that right at that table that they're learning at. And then up in the top corner, you'll see that there is stoves up there. So when they need to cook, they would walk over there and have this cooking area to cook from. Very different ideas from this to the next classroom. And this was kind of brought to us by the FACS department. And here's a photo to kind of show how they're looking at this and what they're thinking. And whether we do 2 foods labs or 1, and I know that we've talked about just doing 1, we wanted to kind of give you that option to see what these 2 are. We haven't really come to a consensus on what direction we need to go, but I wanted to kind of let you see what these 2 thoughts were so that you can see them.
Love to
But this
get your
is one
direction.
the FACS teachers are moving towards this
Yes.
setup?
I question that because in a typical home, which we're preparing and educating these kids for, there's nowhere to put your things next to it, you know? If you're cooking, the stove, where
You're
you
pumping on the
Right,
tables
so
and then
then
carrying
prepare.
This is really more like a commercial kitchen
Commercial,
approach.
It's a blend of kind of the
Prep,
2, yes.
prep in one area, cook in another area.
So would one child then be, because you couldn't fit 4 kids around the stove. Stove, right. So one would be chopping, one would be.
Probably, you'd have to move them through.
So this is another school and something that your department saw, and they came back saying that
So
they liked
yeah,
it,
they
so.
did go and visit some schools, and this is one, I know, Connie Harms, who, has been involved in the FACS department for a long time. She came back and said this was one thing that they saw that they really liked. Now, I don't know if the department as a whole prefers this over the other, I don't know,
If it's a split, if the department really can't come to a consensus, can we have student voice and, maybe former students or current students, maybe get their opinions on what?
Well, is one more cost effective than the other?
Right.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Right, like, I mean, let's.
I knew we'd get down to that.
Yes, this one is less costly.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense, right? Your utilities are in, your utilities are.
They're on the
together.
perimeter and they're,
Yeah.
Let's
Are
case
those
work.
tables movable?
these would be.
Yeah, so you-
These
you
are
could
not
probably
right
make
here,
a
but
countertop right adjacent to it.
They could be movable.
they could definitely be on casters and be able to move
So
them.
I can see taking a pan off that stove, and where do you go with it?
Well, in this case, you can see they have small metal tables in between. It
Oh,
is small.
there is, okay,
Yes.
okay.
But there are some tables there to kind of allow them to move that
Each
around.
stove has like a table alongside of that.
Bottom line is that yours will be tailored to the needs that you all explained to us, so as this discussion unfolds, they're gonna make tweaks to make it respond the way you want it to. And that you can afford as well. Yeah.
Can you go back to the original one that you had first?
You want to see the plan or the photo?
Well, that's fine, I just wanna look at it and see.
It's traditional
I
FACS
can tell
lab.
you supervisory wise, having all the stoves in one area would be a whole lot easier to supervise, I would think, as a teacher, right? Like, now I'm trying to keep an eye on maybe 5 food labs that are cooking in multiple different areas. Like, if all the stoves are lined up on one wall, that's where I'm planting myself as a teacher to monitor what's happening there.
The other one clusters all the stoves as well, so the most expensive thing in this picture is the range hood and fire suppression system. So there's one that gets all of those things, and in this case, they're spread all
Okay.
over, so there's a lot more.
Makes sense.
The other thing to kind of show you on the plan is we do have a central area in between the 2 rooms. One is more of a wash prep space. So at the top, they were talking about a dishwasher, so we're looking at the idea of a dishwasher up at the top, some cleaning area where you'd have your 3-compartment sink, maybe a 2-compartment sink for vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. And then this lower closet would be more like your dry storage foods and your laundry and what would happen in there, giving doors to both sides so that they have the flexibility to walk through and share that space versus creating 2 of these spaces that you have to pay for twice.
I saw a TV on the other side. Is something in there with a camera pointing down to maybe the teacher instruction of?
Yeah, this is like the food channel or
Yeah, like.
Iron Chef, or
Right.
there's a camera up here following people, you can't see it, it's kind of TV, that focuses on the teacher's demonstration as they're prepping the meal. And it's displayed on the flat panels.
Is that in our budget or is that in our report?
I have figured this approach in your
You did? Okay.
So in the other one, this is the traditional one, the other one, it has the TVs too, just like that.
It surely could, so it has that demo, go back to the plan, Rich. Yeah, would be a similar demonstration table that could be set up. that
Oh,
way.
okay.
Instead of, the other one was more of a central table, so it
Right.
had screens on both sides. This one might just have the screen on the one side.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Did we answer your questions you had for us?
Well, I think for us, it would be more of a direction. Do we want to look at 2 of these spaces? Do we want only one? And how would you like us to move forward?
What do they need, Tammy?
What do they want?
What do they need?
They were asking for 2 cooking labs, correct?
They're asking for what?
2 cooking labs.
How many teachers are there?
There are 4.
What do they do, rotate between child development, cooking, or does
No,
only
they're pretty
one?
centralized with what they do.
So only,
Well, I take that back. So Connie Harms does all of it. Right now, I think they share 1 cooking lab, so they have to
and
maneuver through, like, you only have 1 kitchen, so they can only,
so how many teachers teach cooking? That's what I'm asking.
I think there's 3 that do cooking.
And that's all they teach?
Well, no, they do, so Connie does cooking, but she also does the child development.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so they
So
do-
she's not
so
always
they
in the
could-
cooking lab.
Correct.
She's
yes,
there rotating
Yeah, they could rotate.
in
yes.
those.
Right, because then we would have possibly a lab that would be just sitting there,
Empty,
empty.
not being used.
Right.
So if we have two of those areas, will they be busy 6 hours a day?
Well, they would be busy 6 hours a day if we could staff it, because there's always kids that are having to be turned away because we don't have enough, FACS is usually a class that fills up pretty quickly. So we don't have the space to put those kids.
So we definitely need 2.
I would think we could fill 2 if we had them.
But if we staff, and you said if we can staff it, so does that mean we need to add another teacher in order to
Oh, I
staff?
think they can staff it.
Oh,
But
you
right
think-
now,
okay.
so what's happening is, okay, we'll add another clothing unit or another teacher that'll teach an hour of clothing because we can't have the cooking lab because we don't have the space, right? So we shift kids from one to another. If
So-
they could,
So where does that classroom fit into your scheme of things, if there are 2, but then the one that was the additional extra?
So this would be your extra, so we have 4 classrooms. One's your child development, one's your fashion, and then the 2 foods labs that we're showing you right now. And the optional of this being something else. Now here's another idea to float this. You don't have to build this out as a foods lab right now. We could plumb this and get stuff run to a certain place so that you can convert this down the road in a future date as well. And it could be a regular classroom now with the ability to be transformed into a foods lab down the road.
That's
Or we bid it
important.
as
That's
an alternate
important.
bid and see what the prices are and see how they all come in, but still do what Rich said. Plan
That's
it out.
important, what he just said. It means the place is set up to work the way you want it, but you don't have to buy any of the equipment, which is expensive. So you're safe. We know you have more needs than dollars, so anytime you can make a choice that gives you other options is probably a good thing.
Could we have 2 classrooms on the side and have the food lab in the middle? And then have kind of like,
It is a classroom.
but I'll have,
Just go to the floor
transition,
plan. show
but then you're back to
where the
sharing a
floor-
lab, which
Yeah.
is what they do now.
The overall floor plan.
Yeah.
Can you go back to?
I understand what you're trying to do. I think it's gonna be a little hard to get 3 classrooms in that space. It's a little larger because they are foods labs, but I don't think we have quite enough room to do the foods lab and 2 other classrooms in that space. Unfortunately, I don't think there's quite enough square footage there to make that happen. But I get what you're trying to do.
Want to speak to this? No, I've got it up.
I kind of like the idea of the plumbing, getting it ready for that, and maybe we decide to use that as a classroom, but all of the important items are there, ready to go, if needed.
Yeah, the main key is to get that stuff run in the wall so that when you do it in the future, you're not ripping everything again, there is some work, but it's
All
minimal.
your electrical stuff and everything will be done initially.
You could stub it all in, like your plumbing, your underground plumbing, to cut up the floor and redo that later is a high cost. So trying to eliminate some of that stuff, we put it in underneath the headline.
So basically, the cost savings comes in with the appliances. We're just not putting appliances.
Correct.
Can we get those two different budgets, like one with it plumbed, and then one with it plumbed and, well, a whole.
Furnished and all
Yeah,
that.
furnished,
Is kitchen equipment that we use in, is that pretty expensive? When you set that up?
So what's gonna happen to all the spaces that
Yeah.
they can't run the wires and the plumbing? It's a
So
small
that will
area.
be the initial. The
Yeah.
actual,
The fixtures cost money, the appliances cost money, and casework costs money. So there is a savings, an upfront savings. And we could potentially just have it all in the walls, so it's there, you could use it as a separate classroom at that point, it could just be a regular classroom. And then when you get to that point where you need a foods lab, then you can go in there, open up what you need to, finish plumbing it out, or wiring it and all that, and change it. So you don't wanna just eliminate the space, you wanna make sure you utilize it properly.
People can't go.
At the same time, you don't wanna provide a classroom that's not gonna be utilized.
You have to go in through the main,
right, so that's
the main office. It'll be the same. So that door would be, well, he just said you could get into that.
Hey, you touched something.
That's not gonna be open to the public.
No, no, the main office is the main office. The only way to get that is into that,
But she said that's where they put the sharing.
yes.
All right, so here's your overall floor plan.
You guys, are you ready?
So where's the teachers with them?
Here's your overall floor plan. So if we try and take this and put it in the middle, it doesn't really allow for two classrooms on either side. It becomes very narrow. Because this space, while it's being shared, it's not like you can just cut it in half. So really, you could use this as a classroom, this is a foods lab, or you could flip it. We could do it either way, depending on how we want to do it. But I would recommend that if we're going to nix the food lab, the second food lab altogether, we can do that. But if we really think that the potential is there for it in the future, then at least stub it out if we're not going to do
I
it.
think the stubbing is a good idea.
And if you want to bid as an alternate bid the equipment, you can, make a decision. It'll have more feedback. So, on that plan, go back to the plan. You might talk about the makerspace. First of all, yeah, we got a gallery that we walk in, and on both sides of that gallery is student artwork to be seen. Then as we get close to the library is where we bring the memorial information and kind of reorganize it, refresh it as you get closer to that end. And then it's right opposite the makerspace, which has a lot of glass, and then show where that overhead garage door is. Right where it says maker, right through there.
It's pretty likely when that's done, that's gonna be the nicest space you have in your entire building. Because the whole thing from the door into the library is gonna be reconfigured with display space, and the makerspace is intended to open up so it can support activity either in the library or outside of it. So it's really unlike anything you've probably got right now, and I think kids are really gonna like it a lot.
I think you're gonna have other districts coming here to tour to take a look at this kind of layout.
How do you get to the photo classroom? Is that a hallway right there?
That is a hall.
Okay, so none of that that's in blue is taking away from the library.
No.
The library begins,
Right where it is.
okay, so there are bathrooms in that library.
Right.
Are they right where that, oh, those are the bathrooms?
Uh-huh.
Those in the lake raised, existing bathrooms, we're leaving those.
We're not touching.
So
We're
that
taking the leading edge.
makerspace is part of the
This is
library.
part of the
Yes.
library now. We're taking
Yes.
the leading
Part of the
edge of the library.
Yeah.
As is the photo.
Yeah, but they just, I thought they just said it was not part of the
No,
library.
it's
Well,
part
the
of the
blue
library.
is, and the trend is in every high school and school we work in now is that all the libraries are getting smaller. And so it's just a school-wide trend. And so when we were looking at this originally, we looked at it and knew you had more needs than the budget would support building in the addition. And so we put out as an idea, you could take some of the library space and give yourself some benefits. And by the way, you half the amount of money you're spending to give it to you because that space is already built. So we'll do interior renovation, there'll be new finishes, it'll look like brand new, but you'll get a better library as a result.
So where the bathrooms are now, you come in and there's a hallway there.
Yep.
Is there a wall or is that glass?
Right here,
Uh-huh,
that's a wall.
okay, and they come into, and so that is the only enter and exit out of that room?
The photos are Photoshop,
Okay.
yeah, yes.
What is makerspace? What does that mean?
It's a little kind of a learning shop, I'll call it. So you can do a
Classroom.
lot of
Tinkering.
non-traditional
Classroom.
kind of learning things in there. It can be 3D printers. It's really up to you to determine the nature you want it to be. Like you can make it a grittier, kind of fussier makerspace, or it can be more polished and sort of digital. And it's really up to you to establish the program and what you want.
It's based on the pedagogy, it's not what you know, it's what you can do with what you know.
Okay.
So you can come together and do a science project, a history project, language arts project, everybody together working on something from different curriculum areas.
I wanted to switch out that slide, but if you've been in the high school library and you walk in that door, you see where they've got the memorial, the service memorial there. And we wanted to make sure that that's not something that was lost, because that's important. And our hope is that the library would now become a space that the community would feel like they could use. And so that will actually be relocated. We've got a space set aside specifically for that memorial, that Veterans Memorial
Absolutely.
area.
And we have some vets, including myself, so we know that that's to be taken seriously. So I think what you'll wind up with will be even nicer than the one that you have already.
So that maker space, are those all solid walls or are they glass?
That's a great question. So the corridor, the bathrooms are down here at the bottom. This is a solid wall, so we don't want to look out at
Right.
people going into the bathroom. But what we do have along here is a glass wall, and this looks out into that corridor, that area. Losing our screen.
Oh,
There we go. So we have out to the side here, we have a sitting area outside the library. This is kind of your path up to the library. So you'll be able to walk into the library, see what's going on in here event-wise. And then up at the top, we have this overhead door, which we're envisioning most likely as a glass door. So
Okay.
when it's closed, you can see through it. And when you want to expand out, you just open that up and
So
allow
that glass door actually opens into the library area?
Yep.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
And it means the activity can move back and forth between the spaces.
So that could actually be used as an extra reading room or
Yep.
It
wherever.
can be used
it's
as
on the
anything you
library.
need to use it for.
Yep. Adult ed.
I like the glass part.
Yeah.
Makes it very inviting, and it makes it transparent, especially if these are workshops that you want people to join. If they're seeing these great activities going on inside the space, it's gonna make people want to join those activities.
So are you, the way, are you saying that it will hold like 369?
We're looking at this as a area that can be moved around, and what we want to do is talk about how you would use this space. And that, we've touched on it, but we haven't gone into full discussion about, an after-school robotics club might use this room. And the image next is kind of one of those types of setups where they have some casework around the perimeter, and then they have these tables in the middle where they can do their work and come back and forth. This is a little bit messier setup. This might not be the direction you guys want to go. We can work through that and try and make sure the space is going to work best
It's
for
gonna be
you.
glass, I really want it to be messy. but-
Right.
Students love these
Is there,
spaces.
and I didn't even notice, is there storage in that area?
So we do have casework along the side, and we
Oh,
can even
okay.
bring some down here as well
Sure.
to kind of
Oh,
add
yeah,
on to that.
okay.
And the idea is the tables in the middle would be movable. We could add extra, we could pull them out of there, and it would be based off how you're going to use that space and what that space was going to be used for.
Power cords and stuff come down from the ceiling on spools, so you pull it down wherever you need it.
So it's something similar to what's happening here.
When we were in the library, and we've been in the library many times for those meetings, that area of the library is really underutilized. And there's not a lot you can do to improve it. We think what we have will improve
That's
it.
a real good use of that space.
Real good use.
Because that's kind of wasted space.
Yep.
We ended up using it for things like
Yeah.
what you're talking about right here.
Right,
here.
right.
Yeah,
And
the
it fits
conference.
in with your program, and as Greg said, it's not new construction. You got the walls, roof, ceiling,
And
Save a
and
lot of money.
the glass walls, partitions really open it up.
opens it up big time.
Is it much like what you did at, up at Missouri Baptist University in the library?
Yeah, opens it right up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The door works the same way in that back room that's got the blue wall in it.
Yeah.
It's a garage door, it just goes up in the ceiling and you don't see it anymore.
And on the solid walls on the inside, you know, we can have the high school logo and, you know, we can, for very little money, just the paint and graphics, really make that thing look special.
Is it that wall, well, not that, I mean, is it solid?
That's the,
Okay, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so to
That's
the
an
photo.
outside wall there.
Basically, your two walls would be solid, and then these other two walls would be.
Over there.
it's just certain.
On the right. Is that
That's a
outside?
photo.
No, that's your photo.
Oh, that's right.
Photo
Okay,
lab's right there.
That's right, I got that.
The photo lab basically occupies the same space as the conference room is at right now. So all that open space in front of it is where the meeting space.
We're short on time, so we want to keep this, if you guys are good, we'll keep.
By the way, just to make everybody comfortable, we're not going to just waste this on you. There are going to be further conversations about the details of each of these things, and we'll get back to you with all that.
It's so then.
Can I go back to the facts real quick? I just verified, we have 2 fact teachers that have 5 sections each of labs. So we have about 10 sections.
Okay, we ready? Okay, so what you see in front of you, and you have to sort of not see the line, that was the original scheme that we put together for you when we first talked about this. And we think it was a pretty good guess. I mean, part of what it was about was getting it out where everybody can see what work you're doing, and I think that works. The scheme hasn't changed from that. The idea is still the driver. The difference is that where we didn't know you as well then, so now we've made course corrections based upon the information we've learned from you. And one of the things, it relates back to the budget again, which is, surprisingly, the windows are relatively expensive things. And as an architect, a punched window opening and a big hunk of glass like that are 2 different things. And even the structure for how it works is a completely different thing, and the cost goes up a lot when you do big sweeping pieces of glass like that. So one of the changes we've made, and now you can weigh in and tell us what you think, is to do a more incremental version of the glass. But we still think how this thing presents itself to people that drive up for the first time is important. So we've made some changes. There's another thing, and I'm going to say this before you start seeing images, because color is always a thing that lights people up. So we'll just talk about it before you can see. We came to the conclusion, and you may agree or not with me, that everything on the campus is brown and red, and it's almost overwhelmingly so. And so we think we have to be respectful to what's there and make it look like it belongs, but at the same time not try to replicate that yet again, because it's a new time and place, and you guys are moving, and you know it should be something that sort of speaks to today. So this doesn't represent very well because it's a nighttime shot. What I'm going to try and do is escape from this, and I'm going to show you a 3-dimensional model, if it will allow me to do so.
Yeah, you know, there's a whole variety of looks, and as we heard your direction, which was, we want to build as many classrooms as we can. We want the dollars to go to students, not outside the building. So we heard that. So we've had to kind of redial our thinking and not do what would be on a corporate campus, so to speak, but something that would blend in with what the taxpayers would accept, and where the dollars are going to go. So we don't want to get too far out there.
We're ready.
Okay.
Okay. So what we've done is used almost essentially the same form that we had done previously. And here's where some of the tricky stuff comes into play, because we want to use the base of the building that you see there, the lower part. That's the same brick that the campus is made of. That'll be the thing that integrates this into the rest of stuff. Even some of the banding that's on the building can be made to work within that base. But to be truthful, the part above it is your science classrooms. So it's the thing that speaks to the bigger picture. And so what we see there is a panel system on there where, guys, have you ever seen a graphic of DNA? It's done almost exactly like this, where the different components of DNA wind up as little bar pieces on that thing. And so this is sort of representative of an idea that's related to the science and technology that's writ on the building in this case. The variance here, in my mind, and it's sort of where I took it, so you can just tell me if I'm wrong, but we were looking at a darker version of that in order to create some contrast between the base and the top. And the color they were using was a brown that was being pulled from the rest of the building. But here's my thoughts on this. You can tell me whether I'm wrong. Even whatever your politics might be, I think everybody understands now that every year gets hotter after last 98 degrees on Friday of last week. I grew up in St. Louis. It's a different place than when I grew up, and it's always hot, it seems. To paint a building a dark color just seems amiss to me, because you're making it a heat sink. You're asking the sun to heat the building up, and that means your air conditioner has to run harder in order to make that thing cool over the course of the day. So conceptually, I think going to a lighter color in order to make the contrast between the base element makes sense to me. And it may not to you, but that's what I've expressed here. So what you see is that sort of DNA bar graph on there. The entry is down below there, and I looked at the name for the library, but a lot of times people think when a change like this occurs, they may want to rename or call it something different. And the fact that you now are going to have a STEM makerspace in there might mean the name gets bigger than the current name that it is. So the thought is that we build a naming convention piece into that so that everybody understands that when you drive up to the building, that's how you can approach the library quickly. So again, we have the base material that's consistent with the rest of the building, the lighter color panel system above it. The colors are sort of ones that I picked and I think are kind of in the ballpark. They're warmer colors, they're consistent with the way the brick on the rest of the buildings work, but they're not trying to replicate it. And then we've done some stuff at the same time where we tried to respect other things that were related. So we have a new entry to the middle school back here. It's tucked in, it doesn't make itself prominent, but it also makes it so that when somebody drives up, they don't have a problem figuring out where to go.
You know, the entrance to that, isn't it up here?
Currently, it's back there.
Yeah, currently it's back there.
Currently it's way back in there. And what we did is created a screening wall in here that you'll be able to isolate that area back there. So it's not going to be sort of unsupervised back there anymore because you won't have access to it unless you belong there.
Okay.
So what happens then is, and Richard will have some plans to show you where it's moved physically.
So that's the little addition right there?
That's the little addition right
that's
there,
what I was looking
right.
for.
And so it's much more direct, it's obvious, and I think, obviously everybody always cares about the high school, but the middle school counts too. So giving it a little care and thought seemed a worthwhile thing. And by the way, we've used the signage strategy that we've done there. We've done that in other places as well. So we marked the entry to the high school down here with a similar device. So we're thinking of this not as three separate pieces, but as a collective thing. And we wanted to all speak together and work as a team rather than being different parts of the puzzle. And so part of the way we've broken the mass of the building down, it's a relatively large thing, but because we've changed the materials in the way we have, it doesn't feel as big to the stuff around it. So, for example, the stair tower that's on that end steps down a little bit, so it's not quite as large as it bumps up against the old building, showing it a little bit more respect. So there are a lot of different ways we could approach the color issue, but it seems to me that lighter is a better thing. And we did a scheme that was, we involved your red and then the brown, and the two work okay together, but it's just a big heat sink at that point, and it seems amiss. So what do y'all think about that?
I like this.
What are the new walls? How do you make those? Is it like tilt up or?
No, it's an interesting question. Many of you might have heard from your neighbors of a product called Party Board. Party Board is a fiber cement product that they make it look like about anything you want, including wood. So people that are residing their houses now, nobody wants to use vinyl anymore because it doesn't last and because it's petroleum and all those things. The Hardy Board is a fiber cement product and it's molded to look like wood, for example. And what happens is, you put it up and it's a lot more durable and has more longevity than the plastic materials do. So the commercial grade of that is a different thing that's called Nichiha, and it's essentially what hardy board is, but it's much thicker and more durable, and it has the kind of warranties that you would expect to put on a commercial building rather than your residential stuff. So those are Nichiha panels. They're applied to a framework that's in there, and the paint that goes on them is warranted for 25 years. So it's a durable thing. We've used it, and in fact, as I click through, there's an image of a higher ed project that we just finished where we've used the product there, and you'll be able to see what it looks like. Essentially, you wouldn't know it. It could be something, you've seen metal panels on a building, you wouldn't know the difference between the two except for whatever the finished material was on it. And in terms of durability and wear and tear, it'll last the way you need it to. So again,
Like the big curtain wall on the.
well, it's interesting because we thought you might think that, and so Brian and I talked about that. And the truth is that we can make more glass work. It's about a $100,000 swing to do it. And I personally drew the old version, so I liked it just fine. And if you wanted to do that, we could find a way to do that, but it will mean that, you know, you're balancing. So
Yeah, because that right there is almost enough to put the library on middle school.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's a middle ground. It doesn't mean we have to go from where I am to 100 grand, but it's some chunk of that. And so I think that the bigger picture would be, as a starting point, what do you think about the way the thing looks? I mean, does it perform as I've described?
I like it.
It doesn't feel very inviting to
Yeah.
me. It feels
See, the
very
curtain wall makes it
stoic.
like,
Here, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
One is, can the windows be butted side by side?
The answer
So
is
you're
yes.
not using more windows, but you're making it appear that we've got bigger window space.
Absolutely, we can.
Okay, and then my other question would be, the entrance there, is there a way to make that more of a, like, I don't like I think it would feel a little bit more inviting, like, it's hard to hide a big structure like that, right? Like, it's gonna be a big structure, but the flat entrance where you've got, I guess, the words of what the name of the library is on it, is there a way to make that, I don't know, it feels
Curved?
something
Or
that feels
bigger.
a little bit more inviting? I don't know, it feels.
I think the point I would take away from this is that you want to make the entry more prominent.
Yeah.
I personally, as a designer, don't think that you graft an old element onto a new one and call it a day. I think that you're telling me what I need to know, which is you want that to be a more prominent piece of it. So we'll take that from
Well,
here.
that's just my opinion.
No, but
That's not-
others are
I-
nodding their head. I see others nodding their head, so I
Yeah.
think that's
Is
something we can look
this,
at.
this isn't, so all of those other doors are entrances also. This is only one of the entrances.
Yes.
Yeah, none of the other.
And really, it's the library entrance. And
We're not encouraging people to use that, by the way.
Right.
Well, maybe
At
for
all.
us, for
That's why we
encouragement,
downplayed
like,
it.
yeah, sure.
That's not the main
Yeah,
entrance, that's not the safety
It's-
security.
The red ones, like
Yeah.
a little curvature.
it's also, we understood that primarily the people that are accessing that are evenings and weekends, except for kids that are in the school.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
we've made it more prominent at nighttime, for example, so the lighting and the way that entry piece works plays itself up more. And even the lighting on the edge of the canopy would call attention to it as a place. So there's a middle ground there.
If you make that more
I can tell
prominent,
you,
people may try to use it.
first thought,
And you don't really want them using it.
my first inclination is, it looks awfully institutional.
Yes, it does.
And was hoping that there would be a little bit more design than that. However, when you look at the night version of it, it doesn't look nearly as institutional, and so, but that was there's a lot of windows lined up there.
Part of this, I think, is that the screen that we're showing this on is not doing the model justice. Like, when we're done, if you want to stick your head over here and take
Looks
a look.
much nicer on a real
It's
screen.
fussier, as a designer, I'm offended that you don't think there's enough design in it. and
Come on,
these people
tell
are
me.
constantly telling me that there's too
I'm
much
not known,
design
I'm
in it.
not known for not saying what I
Well,
think.
it looks like a hospital or a hotel.
Well, and I think there's something else, because when I'm looking at this straight on, I see our red here, but I don't see any red in this. And I'm wondering if the brown could be red and then make it,
Well, we
I
did
know that
that.
wasn't your thought at all.
No, 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 let me show you something, hold on just a
We
second.
had that.
Because I just.
It looked like
I-
some
It came off.
I mean, the ones that you have tan, so it's brown.
The lighter we get red, the more it becomes pink.
All right, take a look at this now. So, this is, we took the red and we took the brown because they were relatively obvious things. And so, I've been doing this for 30 years and I liked what I saw there, but at the same time, it's a Darth Vader kind of building, you know, it's all dark and it's gonna be hot. And so,
I wanted the tan like you have, but the individual bricks that you've got color on, can they be painted blue?
DNA.
well, this is a really interesting thing here that you guys are gonna chuckle with me about because that's what I had on there early. And Dennis walked over and said, it looks like it's got measles. And
I want to see it that way anyway.
and I have to say that it was right. I mean, we have all, and when I say all of us have been looking for ways to make something here red. And the truth is that it really makes a fight out of everything else. And I think there's enough red already.
I like how you put the new building on the other entrances, how you kind of mock that, the entrance down.
The vestibule.
Right.
And then on the middle school entrance, you kind of.
Yeah, there's some red, yeah.
You kind of brought that color there into the other signage, the entrances.
We want to, you know, we know that the older part of the building is older. And so you're moving into a new time and place. And so we know there's going to be more work after this. The thought is the additive pieces reflect a new condition.
I think bringing the windows together, like Tammy suggested, I think that's gonna help get rid of that look of it. I mean, when I looked at it, I thought first hospital was each individual little room.
Are you talking about
The windows, but if you
We
take,
can play with the windows.
yeah, and I think that would change it.
So let me just share with you that I love what you're telling us to do because it's what I want to do. And so I don't think this is the right version either. And it's not red. But I think we can look at bigger window openings into the rooms and be successful doing it without getting to $100,000 of additional cost. So I'll give you my word, as a designer, we will walk away and we will solve this problem. As long as, generally speaking, you like the rest of stuff, I think we're
I
good.
don't mind the DNA, I thought that was nice, where you.
I like the
different
white.
colors.
I like the
different
white.
What if the-
colors.
what if
I
the-
like the lighter color.
What if the DNA strips are not the same? But I would get all of them being red would look like the measles, but what if that's where our splattering of the red and the brown and the.
I think we can do that. And here's the only thing for you to think about when you make that choice. The first is that one of these colors in here is a standard color, which means it's the most reasonably priced piece.
Yep.
The new pieces are a little bit more expensive. And if there's more of them, then the price then goes up. So the answer is I can do that. The only thing that baggage that comes along with your choice doing that is that 25 years from now, when you paint it over again, somebody has to mask those pieces off and paint them different. I personally don't think that's a big deal because we're talking, I'll be dead by then. But you know, 25 years, it's 2 decades, it's a long time. You may not want it to be whatever color it was anymore and you could change at that point. So the point you're making is we can solve this in the way you're suggesting with a little more animation without getting to another $100,000 in cost.
What if they just, in the entrance, just brought some red into the entrance area?
Well, I did that too. So I actually, one of them, I colored the back wall here from this zone to there. I made that the red piece. So it calls your attention to the door. And I thought that was a fairly interesting thing to do, and it was only bad because there was already red everywhere else. So if you wanted to look at a version of that, I could bring that back for you to review next time.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Plus, it wouldn't get direct sunlight in
No,
phase.
no, it doesn't.
Red
No.
phase.
I think it would bring it all together.
Yeah.
I can certainly do that.
And I think that the thing people are looking at now is more light in the classroom than less light.
We agree.
Yeah, I mean, that.
The good thing you have is that this is the south elevation, which means the sun's on it all the time. Even these small windows will get enough daylight in there, but I heard what you said, bigger windows is better. We're gonna make them bigger and fewer so that it doesn't look like a hospital elevation, yes.
I do like the light color.
I do, yeah, it's a tan, like a.
It's tan, it's a tan.
Yeah, right.
I'm okay with that, I just think
With the darker tan.
I paid close attention, I heard what you said, and most of it is stuff I would have done, so.
I know, and the
I
first
think
one,
I'm
wow,
excited.
that's the problem, the first one, wow.
glass.
Well, the reason I told you about it before I showed it to you, because I wanted you to understand the thought process that went into it, so. That's what I got here, and
See how you did it around the new office area for the middle school, how it's painted
right
with the
there.
red? Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, something just a little bit, actually, doesn't have to be overwhelming.
So I think we have a couple more slides, and Richard certainly wants to talk some more too, so I'm gonna try and get us back to that as quickly as I'm able.
We have to watch our time. We have the middle school to hit, and then we're gonna skip right to the money.
So,
So John, if you got something else to do.
That's all he does.
in conclusion, a couple of quick closing comments on my part, and then I'm gonna hand it back to the others. This is that building we did, it's a higher ed project in Columbia, Missouri, where the same panel system was used. And you can see, it's not a really vocal thing, it doesn't have to be strident. It's understated, it just adds a little bit of animation to the thing, and it's similar to what we've done there.
I think that's a little bit of what that structure is missing, a little bit of dimension somehow.
Right.
Yes.
I like, see how that is with the red and the, that looks.
And while I know adding dimension building-wise adds money, you can do that with color somehow.
Absolutely.
To add that
And in this
dimension
case,
to
I
that
lost the
building.
fight with the president of that university because I wanted blue to be some of those things as well, which would have helped, but sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. This is that signage package that we were talking about, where we will use that consistently across the campus.
And that'll be lit, so when you drive on campus, you'll see it.
Will it be in central office too, in the elementary, or just at middle school and high school?
Not there on the elementary, they're on the middle school and high school.
So no central office either, so just.
There wasn't a budget item
Okay,
for
no,
that, so.
So
that's fine.
the high school entrance right now is very hard to find. So the idea is to kind of bring you to it because this new addition is going to draw you there, and the idea is to kind of keep you awake and give you understand where to go, as well as trying to understand where that middle school.
Richard, I think we might just jump
past this.
Yeah, because I'm watching our time.
Yeah, this is pretty simple. It's just
Can we just briefly talk
Yeah,
about
go
it?
ahead.
Because
Sure.
Because we really were focused on the security in the middle school and bringing that office. And when we changed the drawing, we kind of
Yeah.
left the middle school out. And so this is important to us that
Okay.
we know.
All right, go ahead.
So this is the existing opening, and we're kind of building off of that. You saw in the model kind of what we're looking at doing is basically creating a vestibule outside of that space. But what we're doing is basically taking over a classroom, creating a front desk area where people can come in, as well as getting some, the principal, assistant principal, an extra office and a workspace in there. And what this does is it allows parents to come in or deliveries to come in during school. They would come into the vestibule. We would have a transaction window there in case we don't want to allow them into the office. And then if they do, they can allow them in and come into that space there. But
And
it's-
they come in above where it says new vestibule?
So there's, yeah, so that would be the door into the
Oh, that
office.
is a door.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's direct to the office. The double doors up above would be your existing doors, and that would still be an exit out of the existing corridor. And then they could go exit straight out those double doors if it's after school or an emergency happens, it allows them all straight out of school. And then these lower ones would be more the doors you can see from the street if you're a parent trying to go pick up your kid or whatever it might be. It's going to draw you to those doors and then go into that front office.
Yeah, the nice thing is, this is lit at night, so if your child is wanting to get picked up, they don't have to go out and stand out in the dark or in the snow, they can stand right there and be seen.
And this new office space is taking up that first classroom, so the existing office space would have to be converted.
Didn't somebody tell us that originally at one time,
Yeah,
and
Scott
I know
did.
that, those were all.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
That
where
was
the
the
office
office,
is
yeah.
located.
The intercom system is still in that area, the head end, so actually you're just going back to where you came from.
When
I love this.
My one
plan.
concern is I don't know that this houses what they currently have in their office. Did we check that?
It-
Because they have a principal and assistant, a counselor, 2 secretaries.
So we'll need to determine that a little bit more. I don't have I didn't get all that information. What I did have is the previous drawings, and we actually added an extra office in here because I didn't think it was enough. But if we did need to do more, we would have to take the adjacent classroom, and we could definitely do that. But we need to determine if that makes sense for your program, because if you take over 2 classrooms, now you gotta relocate those 2 classrooms, so we can.
I just know when talking with Dr. Jackson, one of the main concerns was they want to make sure that they keep that team together. So that would be the principal, the assistant, the counselor, and then
Yep.
the 2 secretaries that are there.
Yeah.
And then there's
And we
this
may
office
be able to
right
do
now
that
at
right
our
here.
desk.
Because we do have a principal, assistant, we have that extra office that could be your counselor, and we do have two chairs at that front desk. So that may or may
Really,
not.
the only thing we're missing, they have a little conference room.
Yes.
And maybe that can, I don't know what size those offices are, but, we might be able to work that out within that space.
Or when we build that vestibule, maybe we build it
Well,
out
I
and
was
create
gonna say,
an
maybe
office.
that comes,
Yeah,
The thing that wasn't mentioned is that that gate that's just beyond this thing,
Yep.
that's a secure courtyard now. So you could do a sculpture gallery there or something else that you don't currently have where it's safe and secure back in there. And it's an amenity to the community, so you could have events in there and probably let the community use it in some ways.
What type of glass is that? Is that shatterproof, bulletproof, what is it?
So the main vestibule, that'd be regular glass, but
Okay.
once we get inside that space, we are gonna be doing a film. It's a intruder resistant film that would go over that.
Okay.
When we have the transaction windows, we are using
It's bullet resistant.
bullet resistant.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like you put in at several buildings already, the very
Yep.
thick
Exactly.
UL rated glass. So you'll have intruder glass in most of the doors and windows, and except for that, again, where people are directly interfacing, that's bullet glass, and then we
Okay.
harden the walls around it as well. We've been using some steel plate for that. Incorporate that as well.
I'm gonna skip over some of these, just internal stuff that's going on. So we'll focus on Seckman here, kind of get through this as quickly as we can, and talk about the different spaces. The new addition is about 7,600 square feet, and then we are doing some remodel inside the space, which is your library.
let me just give a quick story. I'll try to keep it under 45 seconds. The original plan back in April 2019 was 5 classrooms and draft a storm shelter around it. Then as we got moving, I was hearing that, our library doesn't meet state standards, and we need to address that too. That's what started this whole thinking process. So with that, I'll let you take it.
So obviously the addition is up in the right-hand corner, and we are building off some of those spaces inside. The 2-class renovation in the center is where your current library is, and we'll kind of go into there. And these dashed areas are just showing the areas of work occurring in this group here. We have created an outdoor area, which we'll go into a little bit more with the renderings and kind of talk about what those are off the library space. Jumping to the plan, again, following the same colors as before. The blue and yellow are representing the new addition. The yellow is indicating where the storm shelter would be for this space. And we did try and reduce it to eliminate overage and cost. If we did that huge library area, obviously there's a lot more cost due to volume. You lose window space, which then takes away light from that space and makes it less inviting. So we've tried to think about how can we make this space work well and still get the storm shelter into this building. The green areas over here are the interior renovation spaces. And what we've done again is we've created that maker space off the library. kind of created that separation, but allow those to basically flow into one another and or be used as a classroom if necessary as well. But what we have provided are at least 4 classrooms, and then that maker space would be that 5th classroom that was originally discussed.
And the green down here is the library. Converted. Okay.
Library, we've kind of taken this original, your original furniture from your existing library, tried to put it in here the way we thought it would be, just to kind of show you how it might lay out in that space, just so you can see what's going on there. What I've also done is create another option, playing with furniture like we typically do in a new library, creating different spaces. These would be flexible spaces that are able to move. Libraries aren't used quite like they used to be. You aren't using books as much, but we are having some stacks around the perimeter, a couple areas in the center there, and then creating these different breakout areas that can be used by multiple classes at one time, or you could move some furniture around and create combined spaces to do one large gathering.
And then the STEM classroom is the upper right up there.
And in this case, we're showing a movable partition, and that's something that we could look at as well. If you love the garage door, you know, that overhead door that folds back in, we could use that same effect here as well, but just kind of giving you another option, a different thing to look at in this space. Create a central circulation desk, so when students come into the library, they know where to go ask questions if they need it and get pointed in a direction, and kind of creating that as a central focal point. Here's kind of some photos of some spaces we've done. You know, on the bottom right here, you can kind of see one of those circular circulation desks, how that might work out, and some of these breakout areas that allow the students to kind of flow into that space.
I think it's very important that we have comfortable chairs for our students to feel just comfortable. And so I don't know if that's a student voice, but that was something I also wrote down for Fox, that, you know, getting
Furniture is critical to the success of these spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. What we'll do is bring in some furniture so the kids can sit in it, you can observe it, and what we would pick would be different than what the kids would pick, so we want them to have a voice.
Makerspace, very similar to the high school, creating some cabinets and space around the perimeter and flexible tables in the middle. We do casters again. We have movable partitions, so if you wanted to open that up, move the furniture out, you could create a large space across that library and that makerspace. But again, trying to create that invitation between the two spaces and make sure the students will actually use it. Typical classroom. This one is in the storm shelter. The way we're handling the windows is by putting a storm shutter to be concealed in the ceiling. You might have a couple jams down the side and then come down if necessary, otherwise it'll be tucked up the way you would like it. And in a typical classroom, we'd have some casework along the interior wall with maybe a wardrobe for the teacher to store stuff and then the teaching wall. Just some basic classrooms, again, based off budget, which we can get into a little bit. Furniture isn't necessarily, you might bring some of your furniture over, you might have to purchase all new, but just kind of showing some ways, flexibility, different layouts that may be useful for you guys to think about. And then here we go again into the all-inclusive restrooms for this space, creating kind of the private bathrooms, the sinks, and then up at the top, those walls would be like half-height walls with glass. Looking at the image, kind of the same idea where you can look in there, people are able to be observed, even in the bathroom, it's private, and you're getting to act on it.
You can see the red lights and green lights above the door, you can see it open. And again, we call it all inclusive, we don't call it gender neutral. So.
Interior, the library, we're showing two classrooms in there as well. Kind of looked at 2 layouts. The feedback from the school was they like this one the most, but we did look at it from the other direction. And whether we do doors on both sides or on one side, it will give some flexibility as well. So just kind of showing you that we're thinking through some ideas and looking at that. And we'll continue to work with what the flow needs to happen in this space with the adjacent spaces and make sure that we get the best layout. And then a few images here of what we're proposing in this space. So we're trying to kind of pull it in with the back of the building and work in with what's there, as well as kind of break out this library and kind of celebrate it from the road. So As you drive by, you're gonna see this building, which we're kind of playing a little bit off the high school, but not following it completely, because you do have some metal corrugated gables over there. So we're trying to use something a little more playful and a little more inviting. One thing to kind of talk about is this outside area here. So we do have this kind of space that could be like an outdoor classroom when the weather's nice. They can come out of that library, sit out there, and use it as a teaching space. We do have a door as well off of the library, and this is something to kind of talk about how you might use this space. So right now, when I go back to the library plan, give me a second. This is that area over here. So your outdoor seating's down in this corner. This is the door here. That door can be used after hours if you wanted to use this as a meeting space after school hours. And right now I'm not showing a vestibule there. Vestibule would take out some space there. It would allow you guys to use that door in the winter, but you will lose some space. But I think what we want to find out from you is how would you use this space? Would you have meetings and gatherings there? And if you did, in the middle of winter and it's freezing cold out, if that door's opening and closing on a regular basis, then obviously you got some temperature issues in there. So it is something to talk about. It's great if you're going to have those meetings to have that space, but it does take away from how that library might be used.
It's a decent height too. It's not just a little thing. It's the corner, the best corner of the room would be the vestibule. So if you don't need it, don't pay for it.
But we want to draw your attention to it to make sure you guys are aware. We are thinking through these things, and we want to make sure that we launch it.
So let's keep going, do the budget. We need to do budget. While you're skipping through, is everybody okay with the look of that? We didn't use brick. We used something that was less expensive.
We did the brick in the back so that the thing that bumped into the existing school looked like it was the same stuff. Transition happens from where the safe room starts forward.
All right, we're following your comment early on about we don't want to put money on the outside of the building, we want to put it in the building. So if you like that look, we'll go ahead. If you don't, and we want more brick, we can do that. But we thought the corrugated look, you're seeing it from a distance.
I guess from a design standpoint, I'd argue that the corrugated metal is actually nicer because the school is very nondescript. I mean, you're familiar with it. This gives it an element of snap on top that you can see from the road. So I would think it'll make the school more prominent and people will like it.
Huh?
Leslie stuff.
Yes.
That's what we were going for.
Are we ready? Secure entries, did you see them all? Rich was doing really fast.
I just want one question.
Sure.
Does that design meet the classroom needs that we have at second grade?
Yeah, I think the STEM classroom, you have to decide whether that's a real classroom or whether it's kind of a flex space on certain years. I don't know that for a fact.
That would be the makerspace, right?
Yeah, the
Right.
makerspace.
I think they have the option to use it however they want.
Sure.
That's why we put it there, that location.
It's there, though.
Anyway.
And it may end up being a classroom that has to be, like, it might just become a classroom.
Exactly, correct.
But they
There's no
specifically
super
asked for
flexibility.
5 classrooms.
Yes.
And we're doing that.
That's why the movable partition's a better idea than the garage door, because the movable partition could be more solid and it's more soundproof. So if you do dedicate it as a classroom, you don't have to worry about sound transfer through a garage door is pretty easy. I mean, garage doors are not very acoustically isolating. So you pull the garage door down, you're going to hear everything going on. So something that's one of the reasons we set it up that way. All right, I want to do this as quickly as I can. I have about 3 minutes. So, all right, so we've broken this down into the bid packages initially. So this is, I'm not going to go through all the detail, but we're summarizing all the Fox campus projects in all 5 buildings here for bid pack 1. And the largest component of that is, of course, the Fox High School project, which we talked about, and then the secure entry at Fox Middle. And the rest of these are our budget allotments for the various projects that have been in this bond issue all along. Your cameras, your access control, your kitchen upgrades, your things of that nature. So all those, everything is in here, filtered in, but everything runs up to the top. So our total for the Fox campus, and this is an all-in cost, project cost, this is, you know, everything in the kitchen sink. So fees, permits, all that good stuff, all in there, is about 16.5 for all these projects. And I know it's a little hard to see, but the cost of the high school is about 15.6, so it's most of that, okay? Seckman campus, I added one project, I kind of moved it around. Once we started sorting these, one building made sense to add in, and that's Ridgewood. I know it's not Seckman campus, but it has the kind of projects that kind of fit the overall grouping. So in Seckman, I added that to it. But we have the Seckman High School, which the biggest project there is doing the science labs, turning some of your classrooms into labs. At the middle school, as Rich showed you, we're going to be building that addition with the library, renovating some science labs, doing secure entry. So there's a lot of things going on at the middle school. And then at the elementary, we have a handful of projects as well. And then at Ridgewood. So what's shown is, you know, again, what we're kind of grouping together. So we're at about 4.9 for that bid package, so bid pack 2. And then the last is a summary of what I'll call the district-wide projects. So we're talking about our secure entries, our access controls and cameras, and then essentially the allowances you set aside for paving, playgrounds, and the Lone Dome Rockport flooring. So you have the 650, and I know you can't see it because it's kind of on the bar there. It's 900,000 for playgrounds and 500 for the flooring. So, and again, I call that allowance because you could spend far more than $650,000 on paving, and you know that. But this is what you decided, and it all has to be prioritized. The playgrounds we've been drilling down on. We actually have Guffey already out. There's an RFP out for that one as we speak. Part of that is funded by the money that was given from the home development, from the subdivision. So that one's actually already out. The rest of them would follow suit, and we've been talking with Scott about ways to, you know, what are we going to do with this one versus this one. So the good news in all this is we spent a bunch of time touring all these secure entries as a group. We went out a few weeks ago with some board members, and we toured all these buildings. And we came back, and what we're excited about is the fact that a lot of these have come down from the original budget because we found some creative ways to still do intruder glass, transaction windows, and things of that nature. And we got away from a lot of architectural movements like furniture and doing ceilings and moving power, where we're doing a lot more with basically just the glass and the doors. So we've actually been able to draw down. So our original budget was 1.5. You can see over there, we've already dropped it down to about 1.2, and we're still drilling down on some of these items. So we're headed in the right direction. So to sum it all up, as I said, I have the 6 bid packs, and those total costs coming down to about 24.7. Down on the bottom are your funds available for construction, which is a combination of bond funds and your contingency fund that was assigned to this group of projects at 23.8. So we're about 935,000 that we're still looking for. But I'll tell you why I said we're optimistic, and we are. So right now, Brian and I have been working on the estimates with Rich and the team on Fox and Seckman, the big jobs. And we're pushing our estimates to the higher end of what we would see as the current cost range. Because we have to do that in schematic design. We certainly don't want to count on any efficiencies this early in the project. But we would think that we'll expect to see some competitive bids and some changes in the marketplace a little later in the year that we think can help us with these. I think Dennis might have mentioned it. We actually just bid a couple of similar projects in Maplewood Richmond Heights, and their costs came in quite a bit less than what we're estimating for these. So again, we're optimistic that we probably will see some competitive savings there. Another thing we have going for us is that bid packs 1 and 2 are going to be the first thing we bid. We're going to finish these jobs, we're going to get them done, we're going to get them out on the market and get them going, which means we're going to know our whole cost for the biggest part of your bond issue up front. And then you'll know exactly what's left for essentially bid packs 3 through 6. So you'll have some measure of, obviously, security, knowing how much you have going forward. So that's going to be very helpful. And then, as I said before, we've already found some savings in really drilling down with the help of the board in going and looking at these secure entrances. You still have almost $4 million of cameras, access control, paving, playgrounds, and flooring that we're still sifting through. And again, we think we're going to continue to find savings. Greg was just telling me that he and Scott have been looking at playgrounds, and we think rather than spending $90,000 at every playground, some are probably going to be 10 to 15,000 because there's some that just need repairs. They're not full-on projects. So, yeah.
So the $4 million you just mentioned is included, but you're talking about it being pushed down, is that correct?
The $4 million is in what I said.
It's in the 24.
It's in the 24, but we're still working to find savings, because it's a lot of things. It's 21 buildings of access control and cameras, 11 buildings of playgrounds, X amount of buildings of paving, and 4 or 5 buildings of kitchen equipment. So all of those are, and I'm reasonably sure when those budgets were set, nobody shoots low. So you think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to shoot kind of high. Now we're finding the real savings.
I just want to make sure that we weren't talking about 24.
No.
And
No.
4.
Well, then my 900,000 would have been a complete fabrication, and it's not.
What about furniture? Was that in there?
Furniture is something we're going to have to look at. Furniture and technology, depending on how we build it in, but we are going to need to find some money for that, depending on, as Rich said, how much are you going to reuse versus how much are you going to buy new. And
It would have to come out of the $4 million allocation or other allocations.
Right.
It's not built into the cost of these.
now we have casework, all of your science casework, everything, your fax rooms, all that is
All the cabinet.
those are all built in. But things like these moving tables and chairs, that's what we have to look at. So you're not,
Lamps are built in, the lab.
Anything that's attached to the walls, like the
Yes.
lab casework.
But the lab tables that we need to move out are not.
Those would be, because those are more specially
Right.
lab tables.
Okay.
We're talking about,
Your furniture
The
in
library.
your library.
Right.
yes, if you're going to buy new library furniture for Seckman, then that's something we're going to have to work on. Or if you need all new chairs for your ACE room, that's something we're going to have to work together
So does
on.
that include the refrigerators, the stoves,
Yes. Yeah, our budget includes those items, just doesn't include literal furniture, just like we're sitting in here today. Like this room of furniture wouldn't necessarily be in every budget.
Does it include for both food labs? The price that you gave us for both of the food labs?
we do 2 free
The
labs?
appliances?
Oh, no, one was gonna be
One,
sent in.
yeah, the one that's just gonna be
It's
shoved in.
just the one.
Just
for
the
now.
one,
Just the
okay.
one.
So
Other one's just an
on
empty
top of
plastic.
that, whatever price you bring in would be on top of that.
Oh, go there. There we go. Other questions? I know we're over, so. John, what else can I answer for you?
I just have a quick question. Middle school, Antonia Middle School playground. I mean,
That's not their project.
It's not their project.
well, it was on there.
Elementary.
The secure entrance.
Oh, was that, that's what. okay.
Yeah, we have a secure entry there.
Okay, I thought it had, I thought I saw.
And
Yeah.
Antonio Middle School also we had listed for some science room work, but I toured those last week and those look pretty
That was
good.
the one I would.
So that would be like minimal casework, I would think, that would be our recommendation.
So I know we're over the budget. We expected we were gonna be over the budget just because all the changes I said at the beginning. But look at everything that you're doing. So nothing's worse than spending a lot of money on something you're not happy with. So you gotta get happy with it, and then we're trying to figure out where to trim costs. Building elevations, everything, trying to trim costs. You can also look at what you could defer until you get through the big bids, and then see what those are, like replacement of flooring, you could prioritize that lower. You can look at capital improvement funds over a 3-year period. I'm not saying you do it, but you know, you can look at as much as you can. The key is to get great bids. Yes.
Well, the program at the two main the big projects, is about as tight as you're gonna get it. So, you know, usually, so how do you save money? We cut square footage. Well, you don't really have that luxury. We've cut it as tight. If you want to achieve what you need for facts, art, science, those are the spaces you need. So the rest of the savings, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna have to dive through the rest of this set of bid packs and find it incrementally. We found savings in the high school and the second projects, but those are already accounted for.
Used it.
Well, right, those are here. So, and again, those budgets are higher, and if you go back and look at your original allotments for Fox and Second, they are higher, but you're also doing a lot more than you originally planned. So the fact that it's, you know, not far, like I said, we're under $1 million and getting close to a balanced budget, I think you're getting a lot for your money.
I think what we want to avoid is, we want to do our value engineering up front,
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
rather than after the fact.
I agree.
That's a losing proposition.
We'll have some ad alternates built into how it all works too, so that if it turns out better and you get good bids, then you can start adding some of those things back in.
As Todd mentioned, the Guffey Playground, those proposals are coming in next Thursday. So that was slotted for the roughly $90,000 originally, plus the money that they have from, I believe, McBride. And we're only looking at possibly 120, so there's 60,000, 70,000 savings, hopefully.
You know, so if we want to trim money, you know, you go back to second and middle and say, okay, we're not gonna do library, we're just gonna do 5 classrooms. Doesn't seem to meet your needs.
Right.
So,
Because we were looking at how much extra for the library, 175 or 75,000?
No, it's more
Like
like-
750, man. I think we
Oh,
were,
it was,
Yeah.
Like 750.
yeah, it's
Okay.
between $500,000 and 750,000. So it's a substantial increase from what the original budget was, but again, it's a substantial improvement to that building as well, as far as the whole function. And we didn't, you know, it adds an interior renovation component, because before the library was staying, there was no cost, but now the library moves, so there's some incremental costs that go along with some of these moves, but we're trying to account for all of that.
The projects that are listed, the Fox campus and the Second campus, does that include the renovations to the classrooms that we will be vacating? So like at Fox High School, all of those science classrooms, is that built into this or not?
No, we don't have the full scope for that, and we have to figure out what rooms are, I mean, some of the rooms are heavy on casework, some aren't as much, so a room that's lighter on casework could be converted fairly easily. They're already classrooms, but some of those are heavy lab, so we're gonna have to look at which parts of those do we need to demolish. But I think the rooms have been recently renovated, the ceilings and the lighting and things are in pretty good shape. So if we could just simply get the casework out of there,
Fix the floor.
patch the floor, then you're gonna have a functional room. And we don't know out of those rooms, which ones you're gonna repurpose. You don't necessarily need to do them all, or do them all at the same time.
I just know at a minimum, we're gonna have, because we're using 3 classrooms in that front hallway. So we are gonna have to relocate those teachers and, you know, they're gonna be vacating pretty nice. That's the new hallway, what I consider the new hallway. I know
Right.
it's been there for a while now, but,
About 20 years.
right, but, you know, I would like to see if we're going to move those teachers, that those teachers are put into a classroom that's compatible with TLC.
We agree. That's something we need to look at the specifics of and figure out how many rooms. And again, I think the scope in there is relatively minimal, but we do need to make sure we account for that.
Tammy, what classrooms, I know you talked about
I
that.
believe there are social studies in that front hallway, and there's 3 right there side by side. So as far as having to have like equipment, you know, that's gonna not be a need, but you can't move a social studies classroom into a current science classroom.
Right.
There are contingency funds that are built into every one of these. So, I know you have an overall district contingency, but we build in money for, obviously, scope, but also for, these are renovation projects, so there's always something in here that that nobody knows about. There's a pipe right there. Drawing said it was over there. Contractor finds it every time. So, you know, that's expected, so we have money in there to cover those surprises as well.
So that's kind of where we are. We have handouts of everything you've seen here. We have it all, so you don't have to take notes. So we knew we were going to be coming with the budget variance.
That's all one version.
We knew it. But it's not as bad as we thought. We have built-in contingency. You know, that's kind of where we are right now.
How much is the built-in contingency?
5% in all of the major projects.
Just 5%. That's not huge.
No, it's not huge.
So what happens if you go lower that? Who pays for that?
It goes over the contingency. Well, we'll just have to see how we look at each one.
We have to either modify the scope.
Right.
Yeah, we would want to structure alternate bids.
This one's there too.
We would want to structure alternate bids ahead of time to get those bid competitively, and not do value engineering after the fact to go in. I mean, we're not a contractor, we're not design build. These are our best estimates doing tons of schoolwork. So it's really trying to find.
Yeah, those are all the same,
contractors
so just
that
grab
fit.
one. And we have extras for these here.
So the contingency on Fox project's about $500,000.
It's 5% of. Yeah. Which is not that's escalation factored into that.
That's also what we did on the summer project at Fox Elementary and Sexton High School, we did 5%. And with everything that's demoed out in the last couple of weeks, I think we're looking at 1.5–2% of that being used, of unknowns. Stuff that the fire marshals make us do to upgrade the building. So 5%.
Was that it, 3 of them?
Seems fairly safe.
Yeah, right. Security, section, and then,
Should be 3 bid packages.
Hey Frank, all the extras here.
So that's where we are. We didn't know we'd have celebration, but I think we made some significant progress coming up with good scopes of work. Great teacher input.
I think the important thing is that it's going to essentially address the needs that we have instructionally. And it's also important that teachers have had a lot of input into this because they're the ones that are going to be working in the equipment. And thirdly, I think it's going to improve our campus. The Fox project for sure is going to improve our campus significantly.
Yeah. You know, the taxpayers are gonna see the end result. They're not gonna know all the sweat and hard work that everybody went through to tour the buildings for security entries and everything else. They don't see that.
They'll see the nice new hood ornament though,
Yeah.
With bigger windows.
with bigger windows.
So what we'd like to do is, we love this board work session, a way of working, that we move a little farther if it's with everybody's blessing, and then come back with, you know, what our updated cost estimate is and scope and all those kinds of things, and what kind of savings we can find.
So when will bids not, like, what are, like, projected?
Timeline? Probably, we were looking at, around October.
Right, yeah, the two, BP1 and BP2, Fox and Seckman, we'd be looking at late fall, early winter bids. That way you'd have those in hand and be ready to start those as soon as we start those in the winter, because they're both additions. We can start building those while you're still in session. We just need to cordon the area off. So we'd like to get those started as soon as weather permits. Now, the rest of the projects are in the buildings for the most part. So those, the secure entries and a lot of that, we'd really like to hit. We're gonna hit those hard next summer. So we'll be bidding that. That's why I said we'll kind of have 2 phases. We'll have bid pack 1 and 2 kind of together, and then bid packs 3 through 6 going out in the spring. early.
And once you do bid pack 1 and 2, you'll have a little more idea about money.
Oh, well, exactly what we have at that point. There won't be any more, what we think it's this or that. You'll know exactly what you're spending, and you'll have exact difference between that.
The Fox project looks like, for the most part, we can isolate that whole thing from the current library, except the front part of the library, they can use the back hall to get to the library.
Right.
So it won't really impact much what's gonna be going on at the school, nothing like the last project.
And those classrooms we're gonna reuse, we do them in summer. We have them all school year.
So Dennis, when do you project that we need to have our next meeting? When do you think?
Well, what do you think? I'm thinking, 8 weeks.
And we want to get you, a lot of folks are off in July, so probably before the start of school, you thinking?
How's August?
Yeah.
August, I think we can work that
Yeah.
out. As long as we know ahead of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get with, everybody and stuff down.
About the first week of August.
Yeah, we have our work section, our first meeting in August, so
Oh, okay.
it's the first week,
Okay.
so.
I think for me, the biggest things is I need to really find out more information about those labs. If I'm talking about the cooking labs, if we can get by with one. And then I want to talk to the middle school, Dr. Jackson at Fox Middle School. What we thought about this. I want to make sure that we.
Didn't we talk about, looking again at Hamrick and try to figure something else different?
Oh, for the security?
Yeah.
Well, we walked around that one quite a
It was
bit.
really kind of crazy that, I mean,
Right.
it was hard to, so
We-
that might be something you want to look at again.
Revisit that. Yes. Yeah, we do have a solution for that, and I know it wasn't everybody's.
And I hope it wasn't taken a lot.
No, that's when we completely decided to get rid of it.
We did the slim down version, part of the glass, it wasn't fast.
That was just not what we looked at that day, so.
And that would be our version right now currently is in the packet.
Oh, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank
you all.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, very good.
That's good.